Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Teacher Development Webinars. My name is Amanullah Sand. I facilitate virtual programs at Teacher Development Webinars. Teacher Development Webinars is a social action project to support teachers and educators around the world with professional development opportunities. It is an initiative using the online professional development to connect people from around the world with opportunities which they may not have had due to the old normal of face-to-face conferences. And now it's my honor and privilege to introduce Dr. Ghulam Ali Bureau for this webinar. Dr. Ghulam Ali Bureau has transformed thousands of lives as a classroom teacher, teacher trainer, and ESOL educator for the last 30 years. He's one of the renowned academic and motivational speakers in Asia. He is a dynamic personality and a highly sought after resource in the ELT world. Dr. Bureau has, to his credit, PhD in applied linguistics, diplomas in ELT from the US and the UK, work experience in UAE institutions, 56 research publications, impressive community service track record, partial authoring and reviewing of textbooks, revision of national ELT curriculum, attending and presenting at a multitude of national and international virtual and on-site conferences, webinars, and teaching and demonstration festivals. 31-year teaching, 20-year research, including editorship, 10-year administrative experience, and the rare privilege of motivating, mentoring, and inspiring a wide array of cross-continental audiences. Dr. Ghulam always adores and strives to be a better human being, passionately seeking to learn, share, care, and contribute. What a privilege it is to have you at Teacher Development Webinars, Dr. Ghulam Ali Bureau. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, most welcome, sir. And
over to you. Take us away.
Yeah, I should be. First of all, I'll extend profound thanks to you, Amanullah, for bringing me this opportunity. I've been waiting eagerly. You might remember that you had invited me a year ago. And somehow I've been very busy and you too were busy. It could not click. But now that it has clicked, I think it should be resonating with everyone. I would also say, offer my greetings to all participants from all different parts of the world, and would also like to thank you for being here in the attendance to listen to my modest and humble views. Now let me please get to the point and share a screen so that I could talk about the topic of the day. Thank you, and I'll be sharing a screen. So here it is, and I hope that my screen is visible to everyone. Can you please confirm so that I go ahead?
Perfect.
And I also hope that I'm audible to you.
Yeah.
Thank you so very much for the affirmation. All dear scholars in attendance, you might know that today we are going to talk about hearing the unheard. Optimizing students' talking time in EFL classroom, and also by beyond, I mean outside the classroom too. Initially, our 80% focus would be in the classroom optimization of talking time. However, we will not be missing out on outside aspect because they also need to, for their social needs, the psychological needs and personal and professional needs, students might also need to talk outside the classroom. So here we go. Dear educators, let us start by thinking. I would like you to please become a little retrospective and recall your own school time. When we were students, we would often see our teachers talking endlessly. Oh my God, they love talking so much. They would hardly ever, give us time and opportunity, floor and platform, rostrum and lectern to talk. So we will find them speaking and speaking and speaking all the time. And now when we recall this, could we all recall how we would feel back then? Would we feel very excited, overjubilant, happy that our teachers are talking and they're not allowing us to talk? I don't think so. I believe my memory tells me, my experience tells me that we would feel dead bored and monotonous, a little sick and fed up of all that we were being poured and poured and poured into our ears without really teachers letting us speak. So our voice was in a void. We used to be in a void. We would be almost as statue-like, as mute as a stone, as a mountain. So this is one thing that I thought I should just start off my presentation with, taking you back to your own school and college days, and might ask you how would it feel when you would really, just listen to your teachers and wouldn't ever have a chance to speak up by yourselves. Hence, let's candidly admit, we as educators, my dear friends, who are listening to me right now at this moment, let's just candidly admit that most of us teachers are talkative, aren't we? We happen to be a little garrulous. We love talking so much. I'm sorry, today I've got to do it because it's a PowerPoint presentation. I wish I could make this session an interactive session, but we are time bound. I really don't do it in my classes. Mr. Amanullah has been my student, and he would corroborate my statement, will bear me out, that I believe in learner-centered approach, and it's the students who I believe should be talking all the time rather than a teacher. So most of us teachers are talkative. Does this not deprive students of getting involved in the learning process and also demotivate them in a way? This is one question that I will leave up to you to think about. And maybe later you just go on brooding about it and get no answers. I believe, yes, they do feel more demotivated. And in this way, yes, we do also rob them of the opportunity to talk and learn to talk and talk in the end also, which is always the objective of an EFL classroom. Let us therefore discuss why it is, after all, important for us teachers to reduce our talking time. As far as I've been able to understand through different researches, I've delved into different researches. I've accessed so many different people who have done this work. I've referred a few books, and I've read a few articles around here, and quite many write-ups and discussions with so many different colleagues. And I believe that once we reduce our own talking time as educators, as EFL teachers, as TESOL teachers, as ESL teachers, I believe it will gonna help engage students more effectively, allow them more talking time. And this will, of course, in the end, lead to boosting up their confidence. When we are quiet, we create the necessary void for students to participate. But if we keep on over dominating the class time, and we are the ones, we don't create any void, any vacuum, any space for our students to participate, then I believe nothing happens. That's why they just don't learn speaking skills. So we need to be quiet. And nothing makes a class more boring and monotonous than lengthy lectures. You'd agree. Most of you would kindly, assent to this opinion that it happens to be really, really monotonous. We keep on drilling into the drilling and pouring all that honey into the, what we believe honey, maybe not honey for them, but we keep on pouring this into their ears. We get to know our students when we let them talk and talk about themselves. So this is on psychological and social level also, because we believe that our own students happen to be aliens to us. Why? Because we have never heard them. We have never allowed them to talk to us. We have never allowed them to talk about themselves. We have never allowed them to discuss what their persona. We have never allowed them to discuss their problems, their personality traits, their likes and dislikes, their individual differences, their preferences of learning, their learning styles, and all that stuff. We remain just unaware of all these things. It all remains a mystery for all of us because we have somehow not allowed them to talk. What to say about talk about themselves? So we get to know how far students have understood when we allow them to speak. It also, these are all different benefits of letting our students talk, because when they talk, we get to know, oh my God, what part of the lesson they've been able to assimilate and what other part of the lesson they've not been able to assimilate and comprehend. And this way we can always gauge and evaluate and assess their level of understanding of whatever has been happening in our classrooms, right? And by speaking more and to one another, they can also self-correct their own mistakes instead of depending on us all the time. So this peer work can promote. We can promote that we are work, that we are support system in our classrooms, and they can correct their own mistakes. They can talk to themselves. These are some of the benefits. There could be many more, of course. I don't limit them to this one particular slide, but this is what I have been able to observe and I've been able to read in different researches. And by providing more space to our students for talking, actually gives them a sense of fulfillment, joy, and purpose, even when they may not learn much. Why? Because I believe that there can be no learning unless it's a joy. Learning is a joy. It's a roller coaster ride. It's for students to lose themselves into the trance and magic and beauty of that has been happening in the classroom, that we can ensure that this is what actually taking place in a class. And next is, so my dear friends, I thank you for your attentive ear, and also now wish to discuss with you some useful strategies by using which we can maximize students' talking time in the classroom. We give students choice and voice. Now, when we are actually dogmatic, predominant, overshadowing, overtowering, or overpowering, and we simply do not treat our students as humans, we don't allow them any choices. When we actually are introducing certain speaking skills activities, instead of pre-deciding what they have to talk about, why not we consult them? Why not we listen to them? Why not we know their choices? Why not we know their aptitude? Why not we know their priority? Why don't we know their interests? Why not we know their passion? Why? Because once we give them choice, my dear friends, and when they get to talk about topics that interest their heart, are closer to their heart, what they love, they're passionately, madly love it, I believe that this would definitely, as a strategy, would help them increase, because they would, every one of us as humans, we're psychological, social animals, and we believe that we talk more about things that we like, those we love, those we adore. Now, if I'm not interested in any given topic, for example, if you ask me to talk about the benefits of mathematics, I may not really be able to say anything about it, or say a very little less about it. But if you ask me to talk about the importance of English language, I believe, could much more intimate to my heart. And that's where I would actually be giving full expression, passionate expression, vehement expression to my ideas and thought, because something is that I like doing. And next is, we must engage students, then connect them to content straight away. We may introduce any content for teaching or learning and in a class, but we must first, at a social level, at a personal level, at a professional level, at a psychological level, at an emotional level, at an energy level, we must connect ourselves to our students. They may like us, they may talk to us, they may feel that they are taken aboard, they may feel that they are taken along, they have a pull along feeling. And once we are able to establish connection with them, that classroom connection between a mentor and a mentee, teacher and a learner, friend and a friend, facilitator and a facilitator, and this way, once we are able to first engage them emotionally, psychologically, we are able to capture their feelings, only then we should introduce some content. We may not straight away, just in technical terms, be connecting them to the content, because they'll not really be able unless they're warmed up. That's the wisdom behind all warm-up activities. Why we introduce warm-up activities in our lessons? Why? Because this is the first and the foremost step, because we actually first want to orient students with what we are gonna do, and we should also have the emotional appeal, and we should have the emotional connection with us. We want them to be with us, and once that bridge has been established, only then we should just introduce the rest of the content, and this way we may ask them. And this activity will also will be interactive in its nature, and we may ask students, talk to them, speak to them, and let them speak. And then this way, this also can enhance their speaking time and speaking space in the classroom. And next is, we must time ourselves. Why we need to time ourselves? Because we must now, as teachers, we must plan our lessons very efficiently, where we must justify and judiciously spend each minute that is available to us. For example, you got 45 to 50 minutes class time, or maybe one 90-minute class, or maybe for that matter, double of that, 3 hours class like I used to have in Dubai while I was teaching there. We used to have 3 hour sessions. We need to plan it very smartly, very efficiently, where we are actually distributing time extremely judiciously and very, very discreetly. Lots of discretion is needed. And once we time ourselves, we can reduce our talking time. We say, all right, we'll introduce the class for 1 minute. We'll say greetings for 1 minute. We'll introduce in 2 minutes. We'll explain things in another minute. And after 4 minutes, my time as a teacher would be over and it will be for the students, this, blah, blah, blah. And we can, pull the students into this activity. But if we are timeless, if we are not time budgeted, if we have unlimited time available to us, we go on filling it with something which real students don't really appreciate. So it would be wise if we could budget ourselves in terms of time. If we could say, well, how much time is to be taken by a teacher, because TTT, that is teachers talking time, versus STT, with students talking time, even at a planning stage, we can do a lot. We can do a great deal. We must plan a lesson in a way that we leave most of the class time for students and less of the class time for ourselves. And even before execution, implementation of lesson, we really can do a lot, even at this planning stage, if we just learn how really to time ourselves. And while we are putting students certain questions, right, what we do is that we hurry for an answer. I have noticed a lot of impatience in practice, EFL practice. Why? Because we are always in a kind of hurry and we hasten students, we push them to hasten an answer. Why should they be hastening an answer? They are not neither robots, nor any other mechanical devices, are they? I believe that living human beings, and they need to process their answer, they need to process certain thought, they need to process their background knowledge, they need to process the information, they need to process the analytic abilities. And if after we have asked them something, we must allow them a bit of time for them to process everything, and then initiate their mind processor and come up with something that to share with us. But unfortunately, not many of us actually do it. I don't blame anybody. That's not my intent. My intent is to self-educate myself also. That, how can they can offer ready-made answers because they've never thought about them. Then not analyze what we're actually asking them, right? So once we ask them all these things, we should also at the same time be generous enough to allow them a bit of time to think about it, to evaluate it, and then they may present their response. And then one other thing that my experience has actually taught me and told me is that we talk a lot about ourselves. We talk a lot about our family in our classroom. We talk a lot that happens in our life through the drill of the day or in a week's time or the episode of a month or whatever, maybe what happened to my son, my daughter, my brother, my wife, my spouse, my loving spouse, right? And we might have talked about our own travel experiences, and we might talk about all that, all different international exposure. Why? In God's name, for God's sake, why? We are not there to relate our own personal stories. Students not really maybe interested in all that because this is their time. This is their precious hour. And we must know ethically, we don't have any right exactly to encroach upon their time. We can tell our stories to our own friends and family and in our own personal space and own personal time. So we need to, if at all, if we have this kind of tendency, this kind of proclivity, this kind of temperamental trait, in that case, we need to curb it. We need to nip it in the bud. We need to control and restrain it. Why? Because apart from this self-restraint, I believe we love talking about ourselves and what really happens in our lives, and there would be no end to it, by the way. So my very humble request would be to kindly revisit if this sort of thing ever happens, with you as educators, as English language teachers, we need to, restrain this. And we sometimes also tend to give unnecessary, needlessly long and elaborate explanations, whereupon we can also explain in just one sentence. And once we feel that the explanation has already been offered, it's time for us to cut it off, right? That's the time we cut it off. Why? Because if we start over explaining things, this also kills the student's time. This is a heavy taxation on the time of students, and I don't really think this will augur well. I believe that we should not over explain things. We may really just explain things as concisely, as clearly, as aptly, as appropriately, as precisely as could be possible as us. And this way we will be saving up on a lot of student time that we can utilize and give that same time to students. They should have the turn to speak and talk, and in this way we can also optimize and maximize their time of talking. And Marian Biden, so 2016 says, please do not tell them everything. Try to ask them. I tell you one thing, amazing experience that I actually experimented yesterday in my poetry class. What did I do? I had to tell them how really to study poetry. Instead of telling them how to study poetry, what I did, I broke them into different groups. I told them that start Google searching and talking to one another, and all 5 members in one particular group must see how poetry is to be analyzed, how poetry should be studied, what are some effective ways of approaching the poetic content, and how poetry can truly be appreciated, how it should be analyzed and studied. And you will believe me, I could have given them one wonderful, remarkable lecture for an hour or so, but this would not have been as effective as they discussed those things. They explored the material. I allowed them to use their cell phones. And once they were using their cell phone, they're talking to one another so much. And I said, everybody must speak in English. No other language is allowed unless you feel that, yeah, this is something you can't say. But in that case, also you raise your hand, give me a call. I'll come and let you know how it is to be expressed effectively. So this really worked. And I say, instead of telling them too much, why don't you ask them those same things? And at least for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, you can do it. I mean, I don't say all the time you do this. This cannot be done all the time, because there's time where teacher also has to explain a few things. I do understand the significance and value of teacher's explanation and teachers, talking time. But this is something that is very practical. I've done it only yesterday, and I've done it so very successfully. And when I, asked students for their feedback, they were over the moon. They were so overjoyed. They said they've never experienced such a thing in their life. And this really happens. But it needs a lot of effort on the part of the teacher, developing groups, making groups, working with students. But this is what we must always do. Instead of telling them, we should elicit from them what do they think about this phenomenon. And in the end, we can wrap up by offering our comments, our opinion on the phenomenon also. And we also need to pause. And once we create those pauses in our classes, I believe that this will also save up time of students, and that time can be used by students. We should not simply be speaking all the time, all the class hour, and must not just. These pauses will also very, very greatly help us. Like, I quite often do it. I just ask a student what you can pause, and then you can say, okay, now let us just take a pause for around 2-3 minutes, and let me see who students are actually. Then they may repeat what they've been told, and they may say that what part they've been able to understand, and how much of that what the teacher has said they've not been able to understand, and how much needs to be revisited, how much needs to be reanalyzed, how much needs to be repeated, how much needs to be revised, and for the teacher to say it again so that they may be able to understand it. So this way, these pauses may help us interact with our students. And next is, now this is really amazing. I think we can now help students. Why? Because if you're sarcastical, if you're too very controlling, if you're too very regulatory, if you're overcritical, if you're censorious, if we find fault with everything that got to do, and if we always focus on accuracy, students will never speak. I believe that students are human, emotional beings, and by being emotional beings, they need a lot of assurance. They need to take risks. The risk taking is a very important part of teaching learning of speaking skills. And students will never take a risk unless they are self-assured, assured that the teacher would never harm their personal, esteem. He will not really be drawing up with their personal esteem. He will every way safeguard their personal esteem. That their self-respect will be protected, and then only then such students, my dear friends, can take a risk, because talking is taking risk. Every other time, very often, back to back, you need to take risk, you need to make mistakes, and you must be assured, you must be certain and sure that your teacher is not going to chuckle at you, and even also let students chuckle at you. You'll not be making a laughing stock, and you'll not be cutting a sorry figure. You will not really be be ridiculed by any other student in the class. That's the job of a teacher, to create an environment in a class where the students not only have time, but they also have confidence to speak. And that boosting of confidence can come only by liberal praise. Why? Because we all make mistakes. Those of us who do not make mistakes do not make anything at all. That's why I say, open your hearts, open the portals of your heart when it comes to eulogizing and praising the effort of a student, no matter how awkward, no matter how clumsy, yet we must always be patting their back and should be telling them, because we all make mistakes. You also make your share of mistakes, so that we could learn and grow and develop and foster and prosper. So I believe that liberal praise is one of the strategy, one of the way of maximizing students talking. Because initially, first of all, they should be allowed to talk. They should feel confident to talk. Talking more and talking maximum would be rather a next stage. The second stage, we must also ensure that the first stage is smooth, is successful, is available, is there, because it will serve as a launching pad. And once we give them a secure, stable or launching pad, they will start taking risks, and this will allow them to talk. And once they are able to confidently talk fearlessly, without any fear, without any anxiety, they will speak more and more and more, and they would be now and that would present a rosy picture, my friends. Then we should also be somehow, as teachers, ask them open-ended, leading questions. In research, they said, "Oh, don't ask leading questions," right? I understand. But in classroom practice, in teaching learning of EFL speaking skills, or for any other matter, for any other skill, we must always ask them open-ended questions. Why? Because this will give them more space, more liberty, more ground to cover. And once they have a greater ground to cover, they'll have to talk about all things, and we'll allow them to make mistakes and speak in an incorrect way, because accuracy should not be our focus. Our first focus should always be fluency. And the more fluent they are, the bigger would be the volume of their talk. So once we ask them leading questions, we're actually bringing them ground, an expansive, sprawling, big, massive ground whereupon they can navigate with their own language. And they can talk about all things they really wish to, or the topic that is assigned to them. But we must not always ask them lead close-ended questions, because that will either yes or no, and those robotic answers will not give them real time. They need real classroom time to utilize, to be able to speak. And once they speak, the more they speak, the quicker they learn, right? And then we also tend to have this nasty habit. Not all of us, there must be so many lucky people, I don't say. There's so many wonderful, great teachers in the world, and I do not include those teachers. I have immense honor for them. But there's some of us who have a habit of interrupting our students. And those interruptions are truly, truly interruptive. And they've shat the confidence of a student, and their confidence is just shattered. And once it's shattered into shreds, it lays on the floor. And really, they lose their confidence. They lose the courage. They lose the ability and willingness to take risk. And if they don't have the ability, willingness to take risk, they should not therefore be interrupted. They may really be allowed to speak. We as teachers need to have a lot of passion, but also we need to have a lot of patience. We should be passionately passionate. And this passion, as they say, Sophocles says, is a great virtue in us human beings. So if we exercise that passions, if we are not impassioned, if we can wait. Why? Because one of the most difficult things in life is also to wait. And once we can wait and wait patiently and do not interrupt our students, this will be allowing them to keep with the flow of their talk, and that flow of their talk will boost the confidence, and that boosting the confidence will maximize their talking time, and they will be really remarkable speakers of English as a foreign language. So my request would be that we should not really be interrupting our students while they talk. And nothing happens. By the way, what really is kindness? I have understood that kindness is giving somebody something more than he or she may deserve. That is what has been a definition of kindness to me. The students are learners, people in a life, a family of friends. They may not be deserving something, but we are still giving them that thing, which means we are actually showing kindness. So, similarly, we need to do certain discounts. We need to lower our filter. We need to lower our standards. We need to lower our, guard. We need to lower our strict principles. We need to lower our laws. We need to lower our rules. And we need to show a lot of leniency, openness of heart, generosity of spirit, compassion, and kindness. Why? Because if we start taking our students to account for every small error they might be making, for every small other oversight, they really wouldn't be able to talk, because the anxiety can only be killed by giving them that buffer, a teacher's buffer, by providing them that much needed comfort zone. All of us need a bit of comfort zone, that emotional scaffolding, as Vygotsky would say, scaffolding, and all these things. Only then, once we show kindness, only then we will really be able to maximize, students' talking time. And oh, I think this I've already said, right? I said, yeah, we need a lot of patience. Patience is something that will get us going. If you are in a hurry, those who are in hurry can never really be. I'm making this bold statement. I may be wrong and I may be taken to grills. I may be grilled for that. But please allow me to say, those of us who are in hurry would never make wonderful teachers. Patience alone is a kind of virtue that can paint us in the most beautiful form as teacher. For a language teacher, patience is something prerequisite, because he's dealing with humans, and he's also dealing with the self-respect of humans, and he's dealing with so many psycho-linguistic issues. He actually needs to give them comfort zone, and the more patient as teachers we are, the more brilliant will be the results of our teaching direction, of our teaching focus, of our teaching effort. Teaching and learning will take place where teachers, EFL educators display a lot of passions, the passions of a saint. And only that saintly passion will get us through and will get us ahead. So, my dear learned scholars in attendance, my request is that we may use passions as a strategy to optimize the talking and speaking time of our students. And this is very technical. But this is something which is very much required. Now, if we don't plan our lessons, we are actually planning to fail. When we don't plan, we plan to fail, right? So what we gotta do is that if you're not planning our lessons, we are already in an erroneous position. And we are actually putting the cart before the horse. And we really never know when we walk into a classroom, we have a void in front of us. We have no direction at all. No direction has been sent. So we what need to do is we need to plan our lessons very, very carefully. As I earlier said at the outset of my presentation, this is a little bit repetitive, and my apologies for that. But I would emphasize, I never tire of emphasizing on this point that we need to do a lot of nifty planning. We need to minutely plan our lessons with a special focus on time distribution, allocation of time for each activity. And at this planning stage, we should keep more time for students. We should brood long and hard on this. We should think long and hard, and we should say, all right, what way I can really be ensuring the participation of my students. And at this planning stage, we have plenty of time. We have a longer stretch of time available to us. We can think and think and think on hours on end, days on end, weeks on end. And once we have been able to plan those lessons, this is our time to include as much of learner centeredness, as much of students talking time as would be possible for us. And within those limits of possibility, we should do a maximum chunk of the class must go to students rather than to us as teachers. So this efficient planning would really be a guarantee for our success, whereupon we will be able to enable our students to talk. And now question, I believe, would argue, would someone in the world would argue that all EFL classrooms and language classrooms need to be learner-centered. And learner-centered approach is something where we make the learner the center of all that happens in a classroom. Now, this is not the time for us to be sages on the stage. Sage on the stage approach is no longer there. We need to be guide on the side. Our role nowadays, that redefined role of an EFL teacher, is all that of a facilitator. So we are there to moderate. We are there to facilitate those sessions, and we must make sure that things start end with the learners. And if the learners is the nucleus of the classroom interaction and the classroom engagement and our classroom activities, only then we will say, all right, now that's where, in fact, the learners are actually doing everything, because they are the ones to whom this class belongs. Classroom is an intellectual property of our learners. And if the learner is not really the cynosure, the center of the class, who else should be? We teachers are only there like a midwife. Socrates says, and I quote, Socrates says the role of a teacher is like that of a midwife. His or her job is to ensure the smooth delivery of knowledge. We are not there to produce knowledge. We are there to ensure that the delivery of knowledge by the learners themselves is smooth, is uncomplicated, is easy. And that Socratic wisdom, thousands of years ago, these one wise men of the world had to say these words. So our role is that of a midwife. We only have to ensure that the delivery of knowledge is simple, is smooth, is easy, is convenient. And this we will be able to do only when we are able to make our learners the center of our class. Now, don't you find this fascinating? My dear friends, we say that we always should be lecturing. Is it the only way of doing things? What about role plays? What about simulation? What about pair work? What about, group work? What about interaction between students? What about interactive classes? What about rotative classes? What about games? What about sports? there are so many hundreds of ways and hundreds of practice activities and hundreds of different modes of teaching learning that we should now need to very, very seriously rethink this lecturing model. Why? Because in a lecturing model, the entire center of tension or the center of entire attention is the teacher. Instead of lecturing, we should experiment all different ways and means and styles and resources and available options that are available to ELT. There are hundreds of such beautiful books nowadays that are telling you ready-made activities. Even when you Google surf, you get to know so many activities are in a ready-made order that you can pick up and use. In certain cases, if there's a copyright, you can ask for permissions. But one thing that is sure, surely there is that their lecturing needs immediate replacement. We no longer afford as ELT teachers to go on with the lecturing mode. We must engage our students and might introduce in our classes, and rather must introduce in our classes, hundreds of different activities whereupon we can engage our learners in hands-on activities and must give them some practical work. They should be the ones who should generate knowledge, who should share knowledge, who should discuss knowledge, who should produce knowledge, and who should deliver knowledge. Why? Because it is for students to do everything in a classroom. Yes, with the sometimes with the due judicious facilitation and talking time by the teacher. We might set up interactive activities for this purpose. So once we set up these interactive activities, once again, we will actually be pulling our students into the net of learning things, doing things, because there's nothing as effective, as successful, as beautiful, as result-oriented as things that are done by us. Self-done is the base done, is what Socrates had said thousands of years ago. And self-conquest is the base conquest. And self-done is the base done. You may tell students, they may forget. But once you show them, they might remember for a while. But if you involve them, it turns into a lifelong learning. And that's what I mean by interactive activities, where students are encouraged and motivated and inspired and they are advised, emphasized, and stressed to process knowledge with by themselves. And once they are involved to a degree, with the deepest degree of involvement, I think they are gonna remember and learn the way they never might learn in any other way and form. So we ask questions. Well, this is a little funny also. What I've noticed is sometimes you ask questions by ourselves and we start answering a question by ourselves without really waiting for students to chip in their bit. Now, we don't allow students to chip in their bit. We are putting a question, we are posing a question, and we are the ones who are answering it. Now, this is incredible, right? What's so funny also? Why do we really do that? So once we put questions, we should have the passions to ask students, wait for the students to please answer those questions, right? Well, brevity is the soul of it. That's what William Shakespeare has said. So maybe William Shakespeare is also advocating the case for economy of words. Now, economy of words is when we don't say anything which is needless, right? Now, this exactly is the meaning of concise also. Concise is not when you have a shortfall of words or shortfall of explanation. It doesn't do with shortfall of explanation or shortfall of expression or shortfall of words. No way. And it does not talk about the flooding, overflow, overdosage of words. It really doesn't mean. But this is striking up a balance, saying only what you need to say. Because often you might have seen that people speak and speak and speak and speak and speak, and in the end they don't say anything. So they say, gentlemen, I'm a good lady. You're speaking a lot, but you're not really saying anything. So when we know the difference between speaking and saying, therefore we'll know, oh, this is conciseness. This is all I need to say. and having a feeling I've said what I had to say, I should keep quiet. Why are we actually speaking unnecessarily in our EFL classes? Because the more unnecessarily we speak, the more we consume the time of our learners. That is for them to consume. And there's so many things that happen in a class. Now, you will not be a wise man if you go on offering an opinion on everything that hits your eye or hits your ears or hits your heart. Or you come to notice there's so many things, so many silly things, so many other things, insignificant, worldly things that students tend to do. You need also learn to ignore those things so that you're not interrupting the flow of their talk, so that their talking time is not consumed away, so their talking time is not actually plundered away. So we need to control ourselves also. Why should we be talking about almost everything? So many things are there, they're not much of a concern, they don't really deserve too much of a thought and effort and words and language and speaking. That's where we need to ignore such things, and this will also be saving us time and that we can utilize for all other purposes. And once we are in the class, we need to get to the point. And the more we are getting to the point, earlier, quicker, you're getting to the point, the best it is. Why? Because why should we be beating about the bush? Why to ramble? Why to deviate? Why to go wild? Now roaming, right? We're on a roaming mode. We must know what we got to do, and we should just get to the point after we have given them a little bit of warm up, a minute or two, then we should just drive home. And this way, we can do a lot of things. Oh, what could be more tedious than a tale twice told? Who says it? William Shakespeare says it. There can be nothing more tedious than a tale that has been told twice. Do you believe that we as teachers need to repeat ourselves all the time? If we are repetitive, we are actually puncturing the pleasure of the class, and we are also compromising the validity and reliability of what we have said. So we don't really need to say things over and over again. We are once in a clearest possible way. We have already, put them across, and that's that, and that's enough. So where's the need for ourselves? But often you might agree that we do have these kind of habits where we go on, repeating ourselves, and that's not really the point. And this I've already said, the more quiet we are, the quieter we are, the more time we are actually creating for our students. And even when you are responding, be frugal. Believe in the economy of words. Don't oversay things. Even when we are responding to students' comments or queries or questions, we need to be judiciously aware all the time that we don't have to take too much time. We should not be holding the floor for more than is necessary. Our questions should be short, focused, to the point, precise. This will also save a lot of time for students to speak. And we should now repeat what students have already said. Everybody has heard them out properly. So there's no point in repeating or echoing students' statements. This is the best. I've already allowed. The more mistakes they make, the quicker they learn. And they talk more confidently. They have that self-assurance that they will not really be taken to the task for making mistakes. So once a filter is low, we allow them to make mistakes. They'll speak up much better, more confidently. And this helps them to overcome their fears. Fear is number one enemy. And once they're able to defeat that enemy, defeat the demon, they will be speaking more confidently and more in a greater volume. We can introduce speaking activities also more often in our classes. This is one other strategy, very successful strategy to maximize students' talking time in the class. Well, friends, all said and done, the fact remains that a teacher cannot afford to be a silent spectator in the classroom. He or she has to perform his or her vital role as a trusted facilitator, for which he or she necessarily needs to talk. Ahead in the next slide are the situations in which teachers' talk is justified. When when you are teaching a beginner, you can utilize a bit of time. When you are actually modeling some input, you can again do that. While you are giving instructions for activities, you can do that. Explaining concepts, yeah, we can do that. That's where our time, teachers talking time would be justified. Or if you are teaching a single student, there's nobody else, we can also interact and talk. While we start and close our class, yeah, sure, we can talk. While we are introducing a topic, or we are giving praise to student, or we are offering feedback on student performance, or we are when facilitating conversation by students. My presentation ends here. I thank you very much for your passionate and attentive listening, and welcome your reflections, questions, and comments. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Bro, for this wonderful talk. I really enjoyed it. It was wonderful and flawless. So now the floor is open for questions. And so if you have any questions, please feel free to write them in the chat. So first question from Faiza Rahuja, she asked, is this applicable to all age groups? I mean, at elementary level too?
Yeah, this is applicable, depends, because it doesn't guarantee that it can be used in all situations. We will see how we can actually use it in which situation. So I think elementary two, if you are teaching is speaking skills, this presentation is about all the contexts where you need to teach speaking skills. So this is how it is. So if you are teaching speaking skill in elementary level, well, go ahead. You can make use of all these ideas. But if you're not teaching EFL speaking skill there, then you can save this up for another assignment when you get to teach speaking skills in any level, at any level. These are generally, yes, I believe, I understand that, yes, they are workable. Yeah.
Great. So Susan Abizandade, and she asked that, please, if you could elaborate more on setting online interactive activities.
Yeah, that's amazing because this is the new mode. Because these same strategies can be used online. Don't talk too much. Have your passions. Because it's only a question of mode. Teaching is online or offline. The same strategies would hold good because if you're applying an offline class, in on-site class, physical in-person class, you may use it. But even when you are using an online class, you can ask them to speak because when I'm teaching nowadays online, what I do is I stop for a while and I invite their views. I have my passions. I allow them to make mistakes. I hand over floor to them in an online session also. There's nothing wrong with online session because these insights and these practical strategies are viable and feasible and applicable for both online as well as offline teaching. You give it a try and you have my word. It will never bounce back. You will be a very, very satisfied teacher. Why? Because if you practice these insights and practical strategy in your online mode of classes, there again, it will be amazing. You have my word for that.
Wonderful. And there's a question on YouTube chat from Neera Kolachi, and he says that I do allow students to talk, but once they start talking, it seems difficult to stop them and progress with the lesson. In such situations, how to bring the focus back on the topic?
Yeah, that's very good. You can allow them to talk about the topic. Why are you allowing them to talk about other things? You can pick up certain points from that very topic, from that very lesson, different dimensions, different shades, different aspect of what you are teaching. For this, a teacher needs to work. For example, you know that this is what I've got to teach tomorrow. You already have the content with you. You already have the topic with you. You're already aware of the topic. Now you sit back home, spend around 30-40 minutes, making sure, as I said, you need to plan. And that planning stage, you should see what are the things that I can ask my students to talk about. And this way, you can integrate your students into the content of very topic. It's not always necessary that you should give them other topics that are not really the concern or focus of that classroom. Within the limits of the focus of the classroom, within the limits of the topic that you are discussing, you can still create so many chances, so many opportunities for your learners to talk. Thank you.
That's great. And next question from Zahra Norozi. She asks that should we praise our students in L1 or it should be in L2?
Beg your pardon?
Zahra asks that should we praise our students in L1, first language, or L2?
It's for L2 because we are talking about EFL, which is English as a foreign language. But I wouldn't say mind if these same very strategies are also used for L1. If you believe, because if you allow students to make mistakes in L1, wonderful. If you are patient with them, wonderful. If you're kind to them, amazing. If you are actually allowing them to talk, amazing. If you are planning your timing yourself, once again, amazing. Because for that matter, this can be generalized to all other languages, even certain first languages or second languages. But here our context was to talk about L2. But L2 is not always English. For example, my L2 is Urdu. My L1 is Sindhi. My L2 is Urdu. And English is a foreign language for me. So in all different contexts, English is not always the second language. Sometimes it's the third, and some other time it may be the fourth language. So it's generalizable, but my context was, of course, English as a foreign language. But this is very much can be generalized also. I don't mind it. This will help.
That's great. So Nurida Ehsan from Indonesia, she asked that how much the teachers and the students should have talking time and characteristics in ELT classroom interaction.
Yeah, actually, sir, so many researchers have gone into it and they have tried to calculate it also. So the most recommended volume of talk is for 30% for teacher and 70% for students. If there is no further research on this, some people say 20-80, but now the recent research is that you actually argue that no, 30% time should be exploited by the teacher and the remaining 70% should be given to students. So this is a 70-30 ratio.
Chandra Sekhara from India, she asked that how does emotions influence language learners in English?
How emotions?
Emotions influence the solve.
Oh, too much, too much. They influence too much. We are emotional beings. You say one wrong word and I never speak in my life ever again. That's why I said we need to be kind and compassionate and understanding. And we need to give a lot of lower or filter. We are emotional beings. If you hurt my emotions, I'll never speak again. This is very, very sensitive and very important question. Never harm or hurt anyone. Expand your tolerance, level of tolerance. The more tolerant you are, the more you show respect for the emotions of other people, only then they'll speak and speak more. So I believe that there is a 100% involvement of human emotions in learning of language.
That's great. And Saima Sheikh, she asked that sometimes even activities don't work in overcrowded classes. What to do with lazy buffers?
We need to plan more effectively. We should look for activities that might work with large classes. We need to research. We need to work hard. We need to go back and start searching. We might change our activities. We might come up with a new set of activities. Something will always work. So something is not working does not mean that it's the end of the world. We must always look into the possibilities of activating, developing, promoting, making, establishing, preparing our own activities. We should see what would work in what context. We must always see that there are so many things that may fail, but there might still be so many things that might work. So this means that a teacher has to work a lot.
That's cool. And Dr. Deepish Kumar Bhaktani says, if knowledge delivery should be smooth, then what method should be adopted to be smooth?
Can you come again, Amanullah?
And Dr. Deepish says, if knowledge delivery should be smooth, then what method should be adopted to be smooth?
Because you love your students, you work hard, you be in time, we need to be punctual. And we need to, give this assurance to students that their self-respect will not be harmed. We need to show a lot of passion. We need to show a lot of devotion. These are this methodology will work with them, because that way the, delivery of knowledge will be smooth. Only when students, we must never ignore the interests of students, their passion, their priorities, their time, their self-respect. And once we ensure all these things, the delivery of knowledge would be smooth.
Great. And another question, did communication play a key role for a learner? If yes, then which type of communication is better for a learner?
Communication in a target language. The answer to first part is yes, communication does play a role, because without communication, nothing will happen. If we simply stop communicating or our communication is disrupted, what will happen in a classroom? Because we said that it needs to be a learner-centered classroom. So communication plays a vital role, number one. I agree with this. And what was the second part? What kind of communication? The communication that is actually needed by students. We must never ignore needs of the students. We never ignore the emotions of students. We must never ignore the necessities of the students. And once we keep everything from the angle of students, these things will work. Yeah.
I think this is a repeated question regarding pandemic era in respect on education. What is your suggestion for online classes where there is no face-to-face
Use
interaction?
these strategies for online classes also, because nowadays the lines between online and offline are blurred. We are too more of an online than offline. But you trust me, you can use all these strategies. Mode of teaching learning does not matter. You can adopt and use and exploit all these strategies in online classes also. Yes.
Great. And another question, in a teaching learning process, what do you think, which things can be considered basics for a learner?
Can be considered
Basics for a learner. Yep.
Basic is attitude. Attitude of a learner towards learning and the teachers towards teaching. There is no bad attitude is the only handicap in the world. There's a cure for every other handicap, but there's no cure for a bad attitude. Our actions are determined by our thoughts, and our thoughts are determined by our attitude. So we need to have a very positive attitude, a scientifically correct and accurate attitude toward what we are doing. We need to know our responsibilities. We need to know our obligations. We need to know our duties. And once the attitude of learner towards learning and our teacher towards teaching is okay, I believe things will happen. To me, the basic thing is attitude.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much, Dr. Guru, for this interactive and wonderful talk. And in final, any final words or any message for our audience?
I only have Mr. Amanullah. You are also a part of the audience, though you are hosting it. But I will still say my email is GA Buriro. Can I write in the chat?
I can write it for you while you convey your message.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. Now, my last message is that, first of all, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to all the attendees, my learned attendees who are there in the audience today. And I would also, after having submitted my thanks, I would also tell them, as educators, as teachers, let us spread hope, let us spread compassion, let us learn to dream, because we need to be powerful dreamers. We can change lives and we can transform lives by the power of love, by kindness, by compassion, by devotion. We as teachers need to be devoted. I'm not getting any money for what I'm doing today, but I must do it. Why? Because so many hundreds and thousands of people are making my life easy. This is my time for me to pay back. And my mode of payback is when I talk to you. If you could pick up a few things from my talk today, I would really be redeemed. So let us learn to spread love, compassion, kindness, and knowledge. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much. That was so profound. Really appreciate that. Wonderful ideas, and thank you so very much for this thought-provoking session and all those great ideas coming from your lifelong experience. We really appreciate these ideas. So for participants, if you're interested to share this webinar, the recording of the webinar will also be available at Teacher Development Webinars YouTube channel. So you can feel free to share with your colleagues, and I would appreciate that if you could subscribe Teacher Development Webinars YouTube channel, because half of our participants have not subscribed Teacher Development Webinars YouTube channel. So yeah, if you are also interested in future webinars, you can always follow our social media channels. We are available on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and of course, our Facebook page and Facebook group. And for the certificate of the session, you can email at info.tdwebinars@gmail.com. And all these events and details are also available at our website, www.tdwebinars.org. I thank you very much for your presence, and I'll take your leave. Take care. Bye-bye. Be safe, everyone.
Bye. Take care.